Hello, everybody. We've just finished talking a little bit about sexual selection, and we're going to finish that off just a tiny bit and then move on to some other parts of behavior. So, we're going to talk about the ways that animals can communicate, which is obviously an important part of behavior for understanding the behavior of others. So, let's open that up. Get your pencils and your coffee and all that good stuff ready to go. All right. So hopefully you've watched those videos too, about kind of explaining sexual selection. It's an amazing National Geographic, just fun video. And then some of the examples that I had of bowerbirds and sage grouse. Um, but I don't want everybody to leave this thinking that it's always the females who are choosy. That's usually the case, but not 100% of the time, because sometimes the males actually are giving more. And so if the males are giving more than the females, if their investment is greater, then they would be the choosy ones. And that happens in the cases where the males might actually die. So most people are familiar with like black widow spiders. And then there are some other insects where the males actually they don't like just lay themselves out as a sacrifice, but the females will try to catch them and eat them. Um, and in these species, since the males may have only one mating opportunity, um, they will be the choosy ones. And they do try to sneak in and then sneak out, but that doesn't always work. And obviously, the faster males are the more successful ones that maybe will have two mating opportunities. So there is a strong selection for speediness in these males, and the males are very choosy to pick like the female that looks the healthiest or the best if he is only going to get to mate once. Now, obviously, um, it is not every single species where a male like mates with a female, then leaves and goes and mates with another. There are plenty of species, especially in birds and mammals, where both parents will provide parental care. And so, if the male is going to provide that care, in some species, he really wants to ensure paternity and make sure she doesn't mate with anyone else. So sometimes the male will guard the female. Sometimes they'll actually put a plug in her so that she cannot mate with anyone else, or just keep on mating. If I'm on her, then no one else can be. So that is definitely a strategy. That is actually frogs can mate for many hours, and so that is one strategy in order to assure that no other males can mate with her. Now, obviously, different organisms have different social structures and like family units. Um, and there are some where there's monogamy, behaviorally at least, that individuals will mate and remain together. There is sometimes cheating, even in monogamous animals, but in general, the parents will build a nest together, and they will both care for the young and they will both provide food for the young. There are also systems called polygyny, and this is a type of polygamy where males will mate with multiple females. And there's more rarely polyandry, where one female will mate with multiple males. So poly just means more than one, right? And so it's gyne is female, so it's more than one female. If one male has more than one female, andry is like androgynous. Those are as is a male adjective. So polyandry would be one female mating with multiple males. And we already talked about the case that, in these cases of polygamy, whether it's polyandry or polygyny, if it's a choosy female mating only once, she's often going to select the same male as other females. So, think about that for a minute. We already kind of touched on this, but if she chooses someone that doesn't carry the traits that others are looking for, then her male offspring also won't have those traits. Now these different mating systems, we can actually look at the animals themselves and get a clue as to what their mating system is, because some animals have sexual dimorphism. So di means two, and morph is what you look like, right? So an animal with sexual dimorphism, it has two different morphs or looks two different ways. Trying to get my pencil to work here. All right. So if we look at things like elephant seals on the left, this is not like an adult and a baby. This is a male and a female. The males are many, many times larger than the females. They also have this giant nose that the females don't have. They look very, very different. And this is the case in many animals where the female is investing most of the care of the young and the males are really just there for mating. He is going to be different in order to either attract a female because she's choosing, or to defend a territory against other males, or to fight with other males for the opportunity to mate. So he's competing for access. And so in species where there's sexual dimorphism, there is going to be a polygamous species. So if the males and females look very different, you can assume that it's polygamous, and more likely the males are mating with multiple females and the females are investing most of the care in the young. Now, in species where the males and females look alike to us, they can tell the difference, but they pretty much look alike. They're the same size, same color patterns. These are species where both parents are going to be caring for the young, and they tend to be monogamous. They're going to be often equally choosy. Sometimes it's not 100% 50-50 in choosiness, but they're both making some sort of evaluation of the other. So in these cases, a blue-footed booby is a great example. They both do the mating dance. They both show off their health. They have these bright blue feet that they lift up to show one another, because they both need to make sure, if I'm only mating with one other bird this year and I'm only going to have 2 chicks, I want to make sure that I'm picking a good mate who's healthy and is going to pass on good genes. So they are both looking at each other. They do the dance together in order to choose their mate. So that kind of dance that animals do, or when they're aggressive, or when they're growling at each other to keep them away, maybe to defend a territory or to defend a mate or to defend their young, they're communicating with each other. And so animal communication is a really important part of behavior. And there are 3 main ways that animals communicate with one another. And some plants actually communicate too. So the 3 ways are chemical, acoustics through sound, and visual. And from what we know of plants, their main mode would be chemical. They can actually put chemicals out to communicate with each other if they're being attacked or something like that. But animals potentially have all 3 of these modes of communication. We're going to kind of talk through them a little. So chemical would be things like pheromones. And certainly if you think about the fact, like if anybody here has a dog and you've walked your dog, they're sniffing the whole time, right? They're getting so much more information by using their nose than we are. But we can still smell some things, right? Somebody might smell good or bad, or something like that. But many animals are really getting a lot of information from one another through chemicals. It's often hormones and pheromones that they're putting out there. Acoustic are sounds. We do a lot of our communication acoustically, but other animals do too, through different mating calls or territorial calls or warning calls. So acoustic communication, and even like ants are using acoustics more for vibrations, like so they'll tap on the ground and send vibrations through it to one another. So that's kind of another acoustic signaling to one another. And then there's the visual, right? So it could be that their feathers are displayed in a certain way, or their fur is fluffed up to look bigger or scarier, or they're, showing their teeth, right? These are all visual cues to one another. And most animals have evolved the ability to determine what is an honest signal and to value those over a dishonest. Um, so if you think about a female trying to figure out if a male is a good mating choice, she's looking for a true, honest signal of health. And often, like red coloring would be that. It's a pigment that's hard to make. It indicates that he doesn't have a lot of parasites on him. He's healthy and he's able to get food, right? So this is something that he cannot fake. That is an honest signal. A deceptive signal could evolve if the fitness of the lyre is enhanced. So if some male evolved the ability, just by chance, a mutation occurred that his feet were bright red, even if he were sick, that would enhance his fitness. He would have more mating opportunities because he wouldn't have to put as much effort into maintaining health. So deceptive signals can evolve, but if a female figured it out, right, if they tended to then have less healthy offspring, then their genes wouldn't get passed on. So um, their organisms will often, deceptive abilities can evolve, right, and they help the liar, but other animals are going to seek out that honest signal. So there is this arms race to cheat versus being able to find the cheaters, right? So then the cheaters have to become more and more sophisticated. So a cool example of this is with fireflies, which we've all seen, flying around on summer nights, and their signals actually are to find mates, and so they'll signal to one another. And different species of fireflies have different signals, like it's kind of like a Morse code so that they can find the right mate. But there's one species that actually where the females will fake the signal that a different species makes. So the males will come flying over to her thinking like, hey, there's a female signaling over here. And they get there and it's a different species and she eats them. Obviously, the males that fall for that are not passing on their genes. So there's strong selection to being able to tell who's your own species and who's not. But there's definitely deception in there. And when we think about like, okay, how could a firefly figure this out and which is real and which isn't? Animals can think, and there's a lot of studies of their cognition, and we often assume that they have to behave like us in order to assume that they're smart. But obviously, they need to behave and think in a way that maximizes their fitness, gets them food, enables them to survive so that they can get a mate, right? They don't need to be able to do human things, but they need to do their things very well. But there's a lot of evidence that they can do a lot of things, human things too. So they can count, they can imitate, there are plenty of animals that can use tools, they can solve puzzles and problems, remember where food sources are, complex maps, and navigate social structures. So some of these, just like we talked about how complex behaviors could arise from simple things, right? If you get positive feedback from them, they can figure out many things, and there may be a lot going on in their brain that they're not thinking through. So the way that homing pigeons are able to find to navigate is actually they figured out there's some like quantum mechanics and quantum physics involved in that, but they're not obviously doing all these complex math problems, on paper, but the way their brain is working is solving those problems. So it's very complex behind the scenes. So just some examples of things that that some studies have shown that pigeons are using this quantum mechanics, as I said. Cephalopods, so those are squids and octopi, they can open jars and figure out they're total escape artists. Blue jays can remember individual hiding spots for thousands of items. Blue tits and great tits, which are another kind of bird, they can open milk bottles and then they can teach one another. So some of this knowledge can spread because they imitate, watch, and teach. Crows use meta tool use. So that means they can use one tool to retrieve another tool to get at a food object. So many primates have been taught ASL so they can communicate. They can steal coins. They figured out human things in order to get food. So there are great examples of, animal cognition. And I'm going to close off and I'm going to have you watch a video because I know it doesn't work well when I share my screen with it. Of Alex the parrot. So this is an African gray parrot, and the great thing about parrots is they can speak. And so once they've been taught to speak, you can ask them specific questions and really dive deep into their understanding of things. So I'm going to have you watch this Alex the parrot video to close out. All right, bye-bye.